Let's talk about some big dream topics that quite a few people around the world have.
Yeah,
One of the big motifs or themes that we find a lot in people's dreams, um, probably the first one is being chased, right?
yeah,
I've, I've had dreams like that.
yeah.
Have you?
Me too. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think just yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So for you, if you were interpreting dreams, what do you think being chased means?
I think it's really dependent on the context. So first of all, you need to identify what's chasing you. So from the male perspective speaking, if it's started at that point, if it's some kind of monster or something like that, it's usually your shadow.
Yeah.
Um,
So what is the shadow?
the shadow, you explain it to me like it's the other part of your coin. So the shadow represents all the qualities that you have suppressed. So it doesn't need to be negative, it's just what you think is negative. For example, for me, a long time it was like my intuition, because I was approaching life with logic and rational, and I didn't consider your intuition to be something that's useful.
Yeah.
Quite the other case.
Yeah.
So that's would be one of my shadow qualities,
Right.
because I suppressed it. Um,
And for context too, to clarify as well, the shadow is usually the same gender as the dreamer.
yeah,
So if you're a male, your shadow is usually a male figure,
yeah,
and then if you're a woman, the figure would be a woman, a female figure as well.
yeah. But
Yeah.
if he's chasing you, like if it's you suppressed more of these qualities, then it's usually like in the example of the dream of my brother, it was literally a shadow monster chasing him.
Yeah.
So there you can see how big it gets, because the more
Oh
you
yeah.
suppress it, the bigger it gets. Because yeah,
That's the more you suppress it. Yeah. The
exactly.
more you suppress or repress an aspect of yourself, the stronger and more powerful it gets in terms of your psychology. And then it will manifest in your dreams as a metaphor or personification of that side of you. And yeah, like you said, the more powerful, the more you repress it, the more powerful it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So usually what you should do, because the shadow is a part of yourself, so what you should do is to integrate those qualities, but also to look at it, because the shadow wants to be seen. That's why it's chasing you.
Yeah.
And when you stop to suppress those qualities and to neglect the shadow,
Yeah.
it will stop haunting you.
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize your own personality type. That will help you a lot because your ego, the ego, so the shadow is very closely linked to the ego.
Yeah.
It's literally like the shadow of the ego.
And with ego, we mean the conscious part of you, like
Correct. Yeah.
your that what you consider to be yourself, the
Yeah.
conscious part that is thinking, making decisions.
Yeah. So knowing your cognitive functions helps you understand what
Yeah,
exactly your shadow might look like.
yeah,
Yeah. So for us, we're thinking dominated. So our shadow would be feeling.
yeah, yeah. So to get back to the question, if something is haunting you in your dreams, it's important to first see what it is. We just talked about if it is the same sex as you are,
Yes.
or if it's a monster, then it's usually represents your shadow. But on the other part, if it's the other sex, like for example, me as a male, if I dream of a woman chasing me, or like in the dream I had yesterday, a bear, then it usually represents the anima.
Yeah.
Because the anima is, yeah, maybe you can explain it better
Yeah,
than I can.
simply put, the anima is the feminine aspect in a man's psychology. And for women, it's called the animus. And that would be the masculine qualities.
Yeah.
in a woman's psychology.
Yeah.
And so one question that might come up is, so if there's an animal in a woman's dream,
Yeah.
that would probably represent her shadow because it's the same gender, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for a man, it would be our anima normally, not all the time. And this is a very generalized
Yeah.
thing that we're talking about. Dreams are very individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the context is important, but
The context is super important. But in general, if we're speaking in general terms for a big chunk of the population who have dreams about chasing them, the shadow is going to normally be the same gender as you.
Yeah.
And so there's another misconception about the shadow too, which is people think that the shadow, because it's repressed, is negative.
Yeah.
But that's not true, right?
It's not.
Not at all.
It's
Yeah. As a matter of fact, you see your brother in your dreams a lot, and you don't have negative associations with your brother.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Because my brother represents for me this empathetic side, intuition, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not negative at all. I think all those things and all those qualities, if it's empathy or aggression or different aspects, they are useful in some context and not useful in another context.
Right.
So aggression would be very useful if you are in danger, but it wouldn't be useful if you are with your family or partner or friends, for example. So, but you need also the capacity for aggression. So those qualities are neither good or bad. It depends on the context and if you have control over it. But if you suppress them, they will be suppressed, and so they will
fight back.
Yeah, fight back, and they will boil. And in some situation, when you get triggered, they will come out.
Yeah,
and then you have no control over them.
So before we try to explain what can be done about a negative shadow that appears in your dreams, like you brought up, how does it manifest in waking reality? Like, how does the shadow show up in our day-to-day life?
Like the last example I can remember where my shadow came out. I was a little drunk, and then there was a girl that pushed some buttons, and then I just told her very bluntly that she has a stick up her ass. So that's my shadow side that came out in this moment. So it's also the capacity for aggression or confrontation in this example. Could be other things. Like another example would be, a week ago I had a bad situation in business, and then I was panicking, and then also some of those shadow qualities come out. Like there, my intuition, my feeling side that I have more or less suppressed comes out, and but I think that has more to do with the anima than the shadow.
Yeah, and the shadow, the more you repress it, the more underdeveloped it is. So it's very primitive. It's very like not function for like modern society, right? Like you have depictions of the shadow, like the Hulk.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, the Hulk was really primitive and brutish, very brutal. But then as he integrated the Hulk, he became more civilized.
Yeah.
And that's how you.
And he, even in the last movie, if I remember it correctly, he just was in this mixed form. He was in the form of the Hulk, but he had the.
It was like combined.
Yeah, exactly. And that is kind of the state you should be in.
That is it.
To integrate the shadow.
That's what happens when you integrate your shadow.
Yeah.
And you don't want to repress him or her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now, how would you go about integrating your shadow? I think so. First of all, is obviously recognizing it, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that you have a shadow.
Yeah.
And that we're not all light and we're not all dark.
Yeah.
So integrating your shadow is extremely important. It is also the source of your creativity. So how would you go about integrating your shadow? I would say the first step is recognizing it.
Yeah, recognition is the first step. And then I think the second step would be accepting it, like not being in denial that you have some bad thoughts maybe, or that you behave aggressive in this way, or whatever the qualities are that you don't like, because the definition of the shadow is it's things you suppress because you don't want it to be part of you. So the second step would be acceptance, that it is part of you.
There's nothing to be ashamed about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like the Hulk, he was ashamed about it at first, and the more he repressed it, the more violent it became.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
only until he became friendly with his shadow were they able to be both
Exactly.
integrated.
To give you an example here, if one of your bad qualities that you think they are bad that you suppress is like aggression, for example, because you sometimes may lash out or insult people if you are triggered. It's actually a good thing to have those qualities, because you can defend yourself if it's necessary, and if you integrate them, you have control over them, and then you can choose how you live with them. For example, you do shadow boxing, you can work out if there is some confrontation.
Just don't hurt anyone.
You can do it in a useful way. Or
it can be very, very powerful for you. It can come to your defense when you need it to, as long as you're in control, as long as the ego is in control.
But if you're in denial and you say, I have those things, but I don't like them, and I deny them, then they will come out, because they are there and they are part of yourself, if you want it to be or not.
Yeah, and that was a good example. Like I do shadow boxing to let it out. Other people might do some creative work or something to express it, so it's not being repressed, right? How did you actually express your shadow? Like something
depends on what qualities. Like, for example, I have no problems with my capacity for aggression, or let's call it confrontation.
That's right. Your shadow would be introversion.
Exactly. So my shadow is feeling. Feeling. Maybe not.
That evil laugh. It's your shadow. I love my shadow, and I love your shadow too. It's the source of entertainment for me. It's funny. Like repressing it was like my biggest mistake. I love my shadow, and my friends love my shadow too. It's funny. The shadows. That's right. So in dreams, what you can do if you are being chased in your dreams, like we talked about, it's usually repressing your shadow. The way you could probably integrate your shadow in dreams is to tell yourself to stop running. The shadow just wants to be friends with you. It wants to help you, actually.
First of all, it wants to be seen
throughout life.
Because you can think of a relationship like mother to a child. The mother pushes the child away. It's neglecting it, and the child wants just to hug the mother, so it's running after the mother. So that's a.
And then what happens when the mom pushes the child away? The kid lashes out. And cries for attention.
And it's more emotional.
And so you shouldn't do that. You should love your shadow. Your shadow is beautiful and the source of your energy in life.
And also your strength.
And your strength. And it will come to your aid when you need it, as long as you don't push it down and ignore it and neglect it. So it's a part of you that needs to be loved. So you could probably, before bed, is just tell yourself, if you've had recurring dreams about a shadow figure chasing you, just before bed, just tell yourself, I'm not going to run anymore. I'm going to face this shadow. And most of the time it transforms into a friendly figure. And just wants to return your wallet. I always use that analogy.
Should you do the same when it's like in the dream of my brother? If it's so long suppressed that it's a big, strong shadow monster haunting you, should you do the same? Just turn around and confront it, or is there maybe?
Yeah, that's the reason why it's difficult to generalize these
Okay.
topics. But for your brother, for instance, if the shadow has become that big and that powerful, um, maybe it is actually the safest thing to run at the time,
Yeah.
and then to integrate it
Bit by bit.
bit by bit, you know,
Yeah.
because it's so powerful, you might get overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And these are psychological truths.
Maybe not hug it directly in the beginning.
Probably not. It will probably swat
But
you
maybe
away.
continue running and just
Yeah.
have a look at it, and
Yeah.
then the second
Yeah.
one, and
Like,
then
like we talked about, like
with a wild animal, it's like
recognizing, recognizing it, see its patterns, see its behaviors, slowly peel the layers away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will sum it up real quick. You can add something if I miss something. If you have a dream about something or somebody haunting you, it could be two things. Like for men, it could also, if it's an animal, like a bear or something else, it could be the anima, which is the relating function to the unconscious. It's the feminine part in men as an easy definition. But most of the times, if it's the same sex as you, like somebody's haunting you the same sex as you, or if it's even a monster, then that's your shadow. Because every person or every being in your dream is actually a part of you. Even if you dream about friends or some random people, they represent a part of you. And if it's chasing you, if it's the same sex, most of the times, it means it is your shadow. And what your shadow is, it's your suppressed qualities, things you don't like about yourself, like for example, your capacity for confrontation, aggression, like could be different qualities, and you suppress them because you don't like them. Doesn't mean,
or because society
doesn't like it or think it's good. Doesn't mean they are bad, because there is no good or bad. It depends on the context. Like a capacity for aggression can be useful in some context, could be not useful in some other context. And what you should do if you have these dreams about somebody or something chasing you, you should turn around and face it, because that's what your shadow wants. It's qualities, it's something you suppressed from yourself, so it wants to be seen, it wants to be recognized. And that's what you usually should do. We can't generalize, because the context is important in every dream. It's like a very delicate thing, but most of the times it can give you a hint.
And why you should do it is because, like we talked about earlier, the more you repress it, the more powerful it becomes, and it could cause a lot of damage for you in waking reality. The other reason you should do it is because it's literally the other half of you, and it is the source of your energy. And you know, it's the part of you that makes you unique as well. And it's also a part of you that just needs to be loved as well. And if you love that part of yourself, you love yourself a little more too.
And it gives you those edges. Like you are no saint, you are not like the picture in a book or a movie, like the perfect version. You are you, with all the good things or the things that you think are bad. And that's the process that Carl Jung describes as individuation, becoming your true self, not like a copy that society thinks is virtuous.
Yeah, exactly. We are whole, both light and dark.
Yeah, and all humans have the same good and bad qualities.
Shadows.
And all humans take a shit, and all humans have bad thoughts and good thoughts, and do bad things and do good things, and there is no denying it. Like even
from Mother Teresa to Gandhi,
they
all had shadows.
Exactly.
Some managed it better than others.
It's you who is in control and decides how to act, but doesn't mean everything in you is good.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
It's absolutely okay.
And you can't even change it, even if it would be considered not okay from society or other people, but they are exactly the same. They just don't
Yeah.
tell it publicly.
Yeah. And you just got to find the
Yeah.
way to express your shadow.
And that's
without
the
hurting
paradox, because it gets worse the more you are denying it. The
Yeah,
more you
yeah.
are pushing it down, the worse it gets. Yeah, you had this example of priests that are
Yeah.
doing some nasty stuff with
terrible
children. It's
There's
like
a reason they
the
do
law
that
of
is
opposites.
because, we project the ideal image onto those priests. We think they're saints. We think they're perfect.
And they have to be,
And
because if they show their flaws in public,
no one would trust them.
no one would trust them.
But that creates a huge problem for them, psychologically speaking, because then their shadow cannot express itself.
Yeah.
Therefore, they, go through these very terrible acts.
Yeah. Yeah. That was only an example, but
a very extreme example.
You can apply the law of opposites. It's also a very useful
the law of opposites,
thing.
And we can get into more detail with that in other videos too.
Yeah.